Today, I'm talking to Lars. Lars has been carnivore since 2020. After losing almost everything, Lars completely turned everything around with the carnivore lifestyle, including his outlook on life. Just before we get into it, guys, please do me a massive favor, smash like and also please subscribe. This really helps out the channel and it helps me to be another voice out there talking about the carnivore diet. Let's meet Lars. Tell me, how did you find the carnivore diet and how long have you been on it?
I've been on carnivore diet since the beginning of 2020. And I found the carnivore diet. I heard about it actually the very first time I heard about a guy who ate meat, only meat. So I was into CrossFit for 6 or 7 years from like about 2009 to 2015 or 16. And I remember reading about one of the competitors at the CrossFit Games. I can't recall his name right now. And he said, I only eat meat. And at the time I was on a paleo diet, which was kind of the most popular diet in my CrossFit community for performance. So I was eating heavy protein, but I was eating a ton of root vegetables, tons of vegetables, and chicken, turkey, so on and so forth. And I remember hearing about this guy eating meat, and at the time that sounded crazy to me. And then, kind of life took over, and I stopped CrossFitting. Marriage got bad, started drinking a lot, drugs. And I kind of had a bad slide from, 2015 to 2019. So I have 4 children. And when my third child is a boy, and when my son was born, I remember he was born in 2015 and I came home, he was about 1 year old. And, I'd been out partying all night long with these business guys and he wanted to play. And I was so wrecked, so destroyed. I couldn't. And from that moment on, I could never drink or party again without intense shame. So, I started looking for a way out and I wasn't in good shape. I was about 190 pounds. Like I'm probably lean naturally, but at that point I was skinny fat. I was addicted to everything, food is tied in with alcohol. You eat pizza, you wake up hungover. Food is tied into all of the drugs that we consume. Food is a drug if it's misused. So I started looking for a way out. I was living in Vancouver. I had a construction company. I had 50 people working for me. Marriage was going really terribly, and I really wanted out of the city. So I kind of abruptly just stopped my business. We had a big life there. I was captain of my hockey team. We had a live-in nanny. And at that point in my life, I was completely detached from my food. I didn't shop for it. I didn't prepare it. I just asked them to make me food when I was hungry. So we left the city Boxing Day 2019, and we moved to a small country town in British Columbia above a lake. And, it was an abrupt change. And we had a lot of demons at that point in our lives that we had to fix. So my ex-wife, she's an alcoholic. And so we're living in this farmhouse in the middle of a vineyard. And there's nobody to cook for me anymore. And at that point, I had heard that Joe Rogan, I'd heard about carnivore infrequently. But at that point, I was like, well, great. I'm just going to cook steak every day. But I didn't really had set out to change my health. And I was in bad shape. I was coming off pretty much a 3-year cocaine bender. And I wanted to recapture my health, but I was still thinking about my health from the context of CrossFit because that was the best shape I'd ever been in. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to start doing CrossFit workouts again. So I started eating steak, and I kind of stopped eating slowly all of the foods that I had eaten when I was drinking constantly. So like you go drinking, you go out to dinner, and you have you got 10 or 15 restaurants that you love to go to. And something that I talk a lot about in my own carnivore journey is, so men have a 24-hour circadian rhythm and women have a 28-day. And that's like our hormonal reset. So a man resets his hormonal cycle every 24 hours. But food is tied into our circadian rhythm. For example, I used to love to eat pho on a rainy day in Vancouver in the evening. So we get all these signals from the environment, and we use food to comfort us, and it becomes a drug. So I started eating steak, and then something happened to me that really changed my journey. I, again, shout out to Joe Rogan. I heard about a book called Empire of the Summer Moon. And it's a book about the Comanches in Texas and how they lived, how their lives were. And it kind of documents them over a couple of 100-year period, from no contact to first contact. And all these guys ate, their entire culture, their entire lives were built on the buffalo. They hunted buffalo, they ate buffalo. They frowned upon bird meat. They didn't really have to eat anything other than the buffalo because that was the most abundant food source. And at the same time, I'd heard a Huberman podcast, and he talked about testosterone. What is testosterone? And I knew my testosterone was in the toilet. I could only get 3 or 4 productive hours out of myself a day. I felt like my brain, I'd heard about something called post-acute withdrawal syndrome. So I felt that my brain was damaged from, I started drinking at 15 and drank pretty well regularly from 15 to 38. So once I decided to take responsibility for my bad habits, it was scary. And I didn't really know how to tackle them. But I was eating steak every day at this point, but also carbs and also pizza. So then after I had read this book, Empire of the Summer Moon, and then I heard a podcast from Huberman where he describes testosterone is, what is testosterone? Like, it makes effort feel good. That's what it is. And in our society today, we think about testosterone as a number on a sheet provided to us from a laboratory. And I avoid science when it comes to my health because I think that we should only use science and maybe if I have a rare genetic abnormality, but 99% of us, unless we break our bone, we don't have to go to the hospital. And on a high protein carnivore diet, I started to see gains in my health that I hadn't seen since my first 6 months in CrossFit. And they started to blow me away. So I started diving into carnivore more. So my first year in carnivore, I was probably eating 2 meals a day, sometimes 3, and probably 70% carnivore and 30% garbage. And I was feeling better, but I didn't realize it at the time, but I hadn't even really tapped the surface of it. So now I'm like a year into carnivore, and during portions of this, my divorce was miserable. It was a terrible time. She was in rehab. She was gone for a while. I got 4 kids. But I started getting primal. I started hiking a lot. I started working out. I built a teepee in our backyard in homage to Empire of the Summer Moon, and I would hang a rope in it and climb it. And carnivore for me, it kind of became a protest. Like now the pandemic was on, you know, they're telling us to get vaxxed and they're aggressive about it. And I'm basically just working out and eating steak every day and running out of money at the same time. So, you know, another side note, when people talk, oh, carnivore is expensive. I've done carnivore when I was wealthy. I've done carnivore all through losing money. I've done carnivore living out of my van post-divorce. For me, like a Comanche warrior, the very last thing that's going to go for me is my steak. As long as me and my kids can eat steak, then I can survive anything. But back to my carnivore trajectory. So then we'd made the decision to separate, and I got a job about 9 hours away from where we were living on Vancouver Island. So it came with an RV, and I packed up and I moved into this RV. It was on an ocean. And basically now I was like completely isolated. I had all the time in the day. I would get up at, you know, 4:30 every morning. I'd go to work. I was hanging drywall. So I would hang drywall by myself all day long and come back to my RV. And I started really going inward. I started reading and studying. I passed a couple different provincial financial courses in that time. So I'd recovered my brain at that point from a year of carnivore. I could focus now and study, and I could be productive at work 8-9 hours. And that took a year of eating steak for me at about 70%. But again, I hadn't really tapped the surface of it. So when I was in the RV, I started going deeper into primal living. I started doing, it was winter on the island on the Pacific Ocean, and I started, again from Huberman, I heard if we could obtain about a 20-minute involuntary shiver, we could trick our metabolism into burning the brown fat adipose tissue off. And at this point, you know, nobody would say I had a bad physique. I had a decent physique at this point. And I did probably 2 or 3 months, 1 or 2, sometimes 3 times a week. And I'd go in and out of the ocean. I'd sit on the shore, get colder, go back in as long as I could handle it, go back, sit on the shore. If it was windy, soon my teeth were jackhammering and I would just sit there and shiver. And then after I'd figured I'd been shivering for long enough, I'd warm my body back up with burpees. And that's an experience to go through, to go like pretty much hypothermic to the point you can barely walk. And then you warm your body temperature back up with burpees. You know, you're doing burpees, barely move, right? And every time I would put myself through one of these like primal cycles, I would feel an internal gain that I couldn't really describe. And looking back on it now in hindsight, I'm sure my testosterone was really starting to pump at that point, because like family stress, divorce, my kids I'm barely seeing my kids at this point. I'm sending 90% of my money's going back for them and the ex-wife. So that's okay. I didn't need money. I had steak. And the deeper I went primal, the better I felt. So like then my physique started to change quite rapidly. And at this point now, I'm just approaching year 2 of carnivore. And I started doing now I got into fasting. And so what I would do is I got into organ meats also, but I would eat liver, but I didn't like it. And I knew from the book Empire of the Summer Moon, these people loved liver. So I knew there was a weakness in my metabolism. I believe that carbs and sugar, they adapt us out of, like liver is probably one of the most intense meats we can eat. on a taste satiety level. So like if it makes you gag, that's like a sign that you're hormonally dysfunctional. So what I did was I would do fasts. So, I would start a hike on about 24-hour fasted, and I would pick a range of mountains to hike through, and I would kind of have an entry point and an exit point, and I wouldn't take nothing, no water, no change of clothes, and I would just go. And so, I would walk 10, 11 hours till I was tired, and then, sit beside a stream and try to warm up, make a little fire, and sleep. You'd sleep for 3 or 4 hours and then just get up and walk again. And so the first time I did that, it was a 4-day fast. And in that fast and in that hike, I got very cold. And I even got scared because I didn't exactly know where I was. And I got I had to recruit mental endurance to push my way through that. I was totally by myself. But of course, we're so weak today. Like that journey is probably something a Comanche warrior would have done happily and intuitively. And the whole time I did it, I had nerves and fear. So I get out of that hike, I drive back to the RV, and I go into my fridge and I take the liver, and I'm super hungry now. And I've taken my entire nervous system right into the primal elements. I was cold, I was tired, I was walking. I think in that 4 days, it was like a 60-kilometer walk that I did. So then I put the liver in my mouth and I sucked on it. And, I'd eaten enough steak to know now that when you're stressed and tired, that steak can really ground you. But the liver was times 10. I got a rush of, we don't even have these words in our weak democratic modern societies for men to express. I call it primal. If I ever had to go into hand-to-hand combat, that's what I would do. I would want to get into that mood because I just felt like indefatigable. I felt strong. I felt independent. So that was a big signal to me. And as I went through these experiments, my body started to change dramatically. And we talk about body composition, but now that I've cut through thousands of pounds of steak, I know that my own muscles, when I'm very lean, that lean muscle, it's also attributed right around my bones. There's less fat in my leanest muscle, and there's less fat in my softest, weakest muscle. So it's quite an experience to go through when your body composition starts changing like that. And, I'm big on Twitter, and I see guys they're eating steak every day. And it's a hard thing to teach guys that you're really only halfway in primal hormones. So I was working out outside with a kettlebell or a rock or a log. Started practicing nasal breathing, getting really deep into that. I would get up in the morning, I'd go straight to work. I'd be hanging drywall by 5:30 or 6 in the morning. And I would not open my mouth for 8 hours apart to drink water, just deep breathing, cutting, holding, screwing drywall. And we are given way more physical energy than 24 hours has in it. If you're tired in the day, man, you're sick. You're sick. And I lived decades of my life in wishing for my day to be over, wishing for something else to come into it. And that's where drugs and alcohol comes in, right? The escapism. So I learned to escape primally. And so that was kind of my journey on Vancouver Island. So I left Vancouver Island, and I've been like carnivore now for 2 years. And in that time, I was raised atheist. And in that time, I went from an atheist to a true believer in God, which is actually the biggest miracle of my life. When you were raised as atheist as I was by, a feminist and anti-God capitalist, we mocked God at the dinner table right from me being a baby. And when I realized that I'd been saved by God on this journey, it's still mind-blowing to me. And like some of my atheist friends, they're like, don't talk to me about God. They're like, what is up with that anyways? And I tell them, I say, look, you're going to find spirituality if you're shivering in the ocean. And if you're pushing yourself into these primal limits of your own endurance and your own comfort levels, your spirituality is going to flourish out of you. And again, like I talk about this book, Empire of the Summer Moon, because, they talk about the spirituality of these Native American Comanche warriors. And they talk about their lives, and they talk like these in a family environment, you're going to lose a wife. God forbid, you might lose a child. You're going to lose everything you have at some point in your life. And I've been there. At one point in my life, I had $1.5 million house in Vancouver and luxury car. And I've lost it all, and it was liberating, and it made me much stronger. And that book, like, they're so primal, and they were so spiritual, they were so tied into the land, that you realize that, man, you can really get through anything if your hormones are dialed into nature. And for me, it's a 24-hour journey. It starts with getting up in the morning and long gazing into the horizon. And then, I pray, and I talk to God for a bit, and then I go to work and I do my push-ups. Another thing I espouse is, like, upon waking, the minimum you should do is 30 push-ups, because that's going to add up to over 10,000 in the course of the year. And like, that'll change your physique. Like I've been doing my 10,000 push-ups a year now for 4 years. And that's why I have a decent physique today. So again, I dial my life into my 24-hour circadian rhythm. Then I go to work, and I just work without stopping. If I don't have my kids, I'll work 8 to 10 hours. If I have my kids, I'll work 6 hours. Like I live in a strict routine today based on a primal carnivore journey. So then when I get home from work, I generally work out outside with a kettlebell. I climb ropes, and I'll do like 20 minutes or half an hour a day of that. And then after that, it's kind of free time. We go to the beach or go hiking or get into nature. And then come home by 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And at that point, it's time to eat steak. So I eat, about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. I have two types a day: a low output day, which is just physical work, or a high output day where I've worked hard and worked out. So if I had a high output day, then I'm gonna really, sometimes I'll eat twice. I'll do an afternoon steak and then an evening steak. If it was a low output day, I'll eat at 8 o'clock at night and a steak. And then, read and go on Twitter and go to bed.
Wow.
That's what my day looks like now. So back to my car journey. So I got home from Vancouver Island, and the divorce was kind of in full swing now, and I had some like major family trauma going on through that. It was a tough time, and And for me, that nightly steak, for me, that's like, it's my light at the end of every tunnel. I know that at the end of the day, I get to sit down, and that steak, it calms me down. And as you eat carnivore, like, there's so many new people coming into carnivore, but let me tell them that the biggest changes, they happen later, and there's no plateaus that I've experienced in carnivore. And like Sean Baker, I can see he's in the same journey. Like, he's skyrocketing up in his strength and his fitness. But for me, like, carbs had made me quite sick, mentally sick. They reduce our testosterone. Body fat reduces our testosterone. So as you get lean, you're kind of gifted with a new body. And it's like, it's a totally different experience being Lars Konga today. I'm 42 now, than it was all my 20s and 30s. It was like, I had no, like, everything before carnivore was centered around some kind of addiction. As a child, it was sugar. As a teenager, it was alcohol. In my 20s, it was, new drugs. In my 30s, it was more drugs. And over time, these sicknesses and these habits, they build up in us, and they're stored in our fat and in the carbohydrates. They're stored in our brain through the desire to want them. There's sickness. I remember one of the first times I was shivering on the island, I could start seeing it was coming off my belly button fat. And I had this epiphany in the ocean. I was like, oh my God, I'm shivering off fat from the first beer I ever drank. That fat, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't replenish. It sits on your body as a disease. That's what fat is. It's like, human beings are designed to walk long distances. Our bodies are very strong when they're lean, and they're very weak when they're fat. And they hold disease, they capture disease in the fat. And these are things that I've just, like, I can feel internally. On Twitter, you'll get called out, like, where's your scientific study? Here's my scientific study. My nose, my mouth, my ears, my eyes, my feeling is a superhuman computer that's registering the environment through my hormones every second of the day, apart from when I'm sleeping, and even then. So, like, if I have one message to tell guys, escape science on your carnivore journey. Reattach yourself with the God-given hormones that we've come equipped with. And there aren't really words to describe who I am today in comparison to who I was the other 30, 40 years of my life. It's like the last 2 years of my life, even through the divorce, I've never been like, I feel constantly great. And I'm like, as long as I stay tapped into the environment and tapped into the things that make me feel great and strong, then that's really what carnivore is. It's like, it's a door into primal hormones for people. And you don't need anything other than, like, a bit of the bro code, the support that you can get from other carnivores. It's easy to do, and all it takes is doing it. You don't need science. Like, it's all a matrix. The whole thing from top to bottom, the entire food industry, it's all designed to make you weaker, because that's what you are. If your wife isn't a carnivore and she makes your food every day, your testosterone is too low. If you drink alcohol, your testosterone is too low. And when you escape that, and when you leverage steak to escape that. You couldn't give me $1 billion today if I had to go back to the hormones I had in my 30s. I wouldn't take it. There's nothing that I would trade for the feeling that I have. So that's kind of when I evangelize carnivore, it's like at a certain point, I'm begging guys to try it. And past that point, I'm saying to them, you're so fucking weak, man. You got no idea. And like, I had a huge fight with my dad over carnivore. And like, I got pretty good at CrossFit. At one point, I could do like a 425 deadlift, like a 215 snatch. So, I was strong, but I was also 190 and I had pain all back from broken back injury I had at 20. And I had inflammation all through my body that I couldn't really deal with. And I drank alcohol, so on and so forth. And now I'm 161 pounds and I could kill my 35-year-old self in 5 minutes. I kind of carry one of these around all the time. I work my grip strength ad nauseum. And like, I kind of feel like a primate, a human primate. Like I can run for hours on the trails in the heat. I tan, I'm fair skinned, but I can be out in the sun 10 hours, no sunscreen. Yeah, my skin will be a little tender the next day, but by the afternoon, it feels normal again. And that's it's a sign. We just replenish quickly when we're healthy. We don't hold a sunburn that peels for 2 weeks. Like that's a disease in itself. And that's kind of like, I can go on and on about the effects of carnivore. Like when your testosterone is high, like guys will say, well, what's your testosterone, bro? I don't get it tested. Do you know how I measure my testosterone? Like if I'm proud of my morning erection and my brain says, damn, it looks big today. And that's happening multiple times a week. And I welcome challenge and I'm not afraid of anything. I'll wager that my testosterone is pretty close to as high as it can be for my own DNA. And even if I got a test done, there's nothing I could really do to increase it anymore. I already spend my whole day living how I like to live, being healthy, right? So again, it's like everything we need is within us. And like, I know I'm hungry a lot. I like being hungry today. In the winter, I was living out of my van after I lost the house. And I was like, okay, I got to find a place ASAP. So I'm like, I'm going to fast today. And I'm not eating until I move into an apartment. 7 days later, 6.5 days later, I was sleeping on the floor of my new apartment with no furniture, right? And again, like these aren't miraculous stories. If you hear in history how men got through long hunting trips or whatever we needed, well, we had to get very hungry to get what we needed from the world. That's a typical masculine journey. And I'll tell guys, if you haven't been through that, your hormones are not optimal because that's what we're built to do. So yeah, it's like now today, it's like I'm always searching for new primal hormonal ground to find. So right now I'm doing fermented meats. So I have a couple jars of fermented heart and liver, and they're getting rotten. And I'll take those out and eat a few bites a day because I know that the bacteria in our guts are not adapted well. They're not. Just by virtue of the modern world, from cleaning supplies to endocrine disruptors to the laundry detergent. And I think a good strategy is raw rotten meat in the belly. Because again, if you're a hunter-gatherer for millions of years on Earth, you're going to experience hunger. You're going to experience having to eat old meat. And if we live primally, it makes us stronger. I have faith in that. So yeah, that's kind of my carnivore journey.
Wow. So that's quite a story. So I've got a few questions. So firstly, just regarding your family situation. So like you said the divorce was pretty rough, but like you're still getting to see your kids? Is you still see them regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid to say it. When I got home from the island, I remember stopping and praying at the river I like to swim in. I said, God, I don't know what you have in store for me, because my ex was a demonic influence on my life. And I mean, I wasn't a great husband either. And I said, I don't know what's coming. I've been away for so long, but I'm ready for it. When I got home, I learned she'd been dating a convicted sex offender. So I went through like a 6 month terrible fight. I actually ended up, I rented a place. I turned that damage deposit back in. I was still on the lease and still paying the rent in the first house. So I moved right back in and just refused to leave. I said, I'm not leaving here until he is either buried or gone. He's never he's meeting my kids ever. And she got bamboozled. He fooled her, right? Like, she's a fool. And how do I know he was a convicted sex offender? Because I grew up in a tiny town and he's born in the same year as me. I tell people it like this. If you took 100 boys from our valley and put us all in a gymnasium, 99 of us would vote him out. He'd serve time in jail. So that was just a family drama that all of us are going to go through family dramas in our life. And that's one of the ones that I went through. And it was a big fight. But again, it's like it becomes a small part of my day. Those fights that you go in, and I won that fight. He's gone. And I didn't fight her on the house. She filed a big court action against me, and I left. And I have my kids now. That was another fight to get my kids back. But I won that fight, and I have my kids 50-50. We do Wednesday to Wednesday now. And, my kids eat carnivore when they're here. I got kids 4, 8, 12, and 16. And I feed them. My 2 oldest ones are not that interested in it, but my 2 little ones, they eat steak every day with me. And, like today, I'm really only interested in being a good example for my kids and keeping them out of the same matrices that destroyed decades of my life. Like, sugar becomes alcohol. Alcohol often becomes cocaine, something else. Now you're going to get low testosterone, depression. It's not that hard to figure out if you just back up for a second. And whatever the drug is, it's like, whether it's an opioid, whether it's SSRI, an antidepressant, they're all the same shit. It's like carbohydrates. They're just a sleeping bag on your own metabolism. They're like a carbohydrate sleeping bag. And it can take years to take that sleeping bag off again. Drugs are no different. They're a spiritual and neurological filter on the environment. And, it's going to take a few years to reset your spiritual satiety after you leave drugs. And yeah, you can go to AA, you can do whatever, but ultimately you have to reckon with your own self. And how I've done that is eating steak and trying to keep my hormones tied into nature.
Nice. So you mentioned, sorry, just to quickly touch on the way you're eating. You mentioned liver. Is that always raw? Do you cook that? How are you eating that?
No, I eat all my organs. I eat raw.
Right.
Like I eat the whole cow, tongue to the tail, and all the organs in between as I can get them. I won't eat raw organs if it's from a store, but I source my own organs from farmers. And like I don't take any supplements at all. Like not even a vitamin, nothing. Like organs are a supplement if you think about it. Super nutrient dense. And like again, I think 2 years into carnivore before, just about 2 years before I had gone into raw liver. And 2 months after eating raw liver, I dropped another couple, like I got leaner again. And every time I get leaner and lighter, I also get stronger. There's gains. That's another matrix that guys are in. They want to bulk up, right? Like I remember when I was in CrossFit, big gym bros would come into CrossFit and find out how weak they are. And now, if I take CrossFitters into the environment, they find out how weak they are. Like gyms are another matrix. Like we're not made to work out on a flat man-made surface under fluorescent lights. Like it's a governor on the fitness experiment in and itself. Your fitness has to come from nature. It has to come from variable ground. It has to come from natural movements, like climbing a rope. We were monkeys. We should be able to climb. There's just, it kind of becomes a never-ending experience of enjoyment. And every time I more escape the matrix, every time I leave the matrix more, I get another gain.
I like how you also talked about how those gains, it never stops. It just keeps going, right? Because you always just keep noticing things like, hey, that's better. That's better.
Even how strangers perceive me, it's almost surreal now. Like the world's more friendly. Everybody's friendly to me. Like we don't even think about sickness in the right way. Like if you have a cold, well, you're also mentally drained. So and your body's temperature isn't regulating as well, and you couldn't run as far. Everything is whole body tied into nature. So like you go to a doctor and they're looking to put a microscope on you and label it down to one single problem, and that's just not how nature works. Everything's tied together, everything affects everything else. And from a first principle standpoint, what you put into your body on a daily basis is going to have a major impact. And that's not just food, it's oxygen, how you breathe, if you're a mouth breather, if you live in a city, if you live in the country, all of it, everything negative, it's just going to ratchet your hormones down, and everything natural and primal that you do is going to ratchet them up. But the good news is, like, I completely fixed myself in 3 years from, if you name a bad trauma, I've probably been through it, from violence to car accidents to, I've kind of had a crazy life. And I see all of it now as just like our culture and our world. It's disgusting. It's disgusting what we're doing to our kids right now. I go to the beach and I'm appalled. I see, when I was in elementary school, there was one obese boy. Now, half of those kids are obese. What's going to happen? It's despicable. It's despicable we're letting this happen. I think that the doctors and the nutritionists and all these people should be hung from lamp poles. They're corrupt as fuck. It should be illegal. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting what's happening to health. But on the positive side, my goal in carnivore, I believe if we can get 10% of men in every community in North America, Europe, on the carnivore diet, I think that we can wipe out the pharma food matrix. Just that's how bad our testosterone is. If 10% of the guys in my town felt like me, I mean, it'd be an absolute game changer.
It'd change everything, right?
It'll change everything.
Mm.
100% it will. We can't lead with low testosterone, and our jobs are to be leaders. That's what our God-given role is. Like the problem in the sexes right now between men and women, it's our fault. Most men are too weak. That why should a woman want to have babies with a low testosterone man? And they're everywhere. Like how can you blame them? Like I see today I see most problems as male weakness problems. Like we're too weak. We're too weak. And the way out of weakness is testosterone. Like if you had a magic wand and you could take and you could give a gift to 10% of the men in the world today, what gift would you give them? I would give them 10% more testosterone. Or sorry, I would give twice as much, or what's the right way to say that? I would give a third more testosterone to 10% of all the men in the world. And in 2 weeks, the world would be a different place. Because when your hormones are dialed into what makes them dialed, nature, our hormones don't work in a vacuum. They're conjunctive. They work together with input from the environment. Sitting in your car, you're shielding your hormones. Walking in the forest, you're letting them flourish. This is not hard stuff. And I mean, I believe with all my heart, I try to do it as an example and hope others will follow. Because, today a guy messaged me, he said, are you charging for these services? Are you coaching? And I'm not. I'll help it. Anybody messages me on Twitter, I'll put as much time into them as they're worth to help them feel better, because I think ultimately it's going to help all of us. And, maybe one day I'll try to have a carnivore store with t-shirts and stuff or whatever. But today I'm in fear of the environment we're in. And my solution out of the problems that we have is to get men healthy and stop drinking alcohol. When I tell guys, they say, how do I start carnivore? Well, what do I do? So I do it like this. It starts every Sunday at 7 p.m. and it's a 48-hour fast. Let's just close the door on the carb matrix for 2 days. And some guys fail right there and other guys pick it up. And then Tuesday at 7 p.m., you break with a steak. And probably 7 or 8 out of every 10 guys that I've put onto that method, they'll message me 3 months later and they'll be like, bro, you got no idea. I lost 50 pounds, or I started a business. I feel so good. And that gives me shivers when I think about it, because when I walk down the street, 9 out of 10 men, their heads are in their shoes. They don't even know how depressed they are. Some of the successful ones usually are just resting on their ego of whatever success they think they have, saying, oh, I love beer. They're still sick. So it's just sickness spread across the land. And the beacon of hope is carnivore. It's primal living. We can fix this.
Yeah. Great. So we met through Twitter as well. So like that, is that your goal with your Twitter account? You just want to spread the message as much as possible?
Yeah, 100%. Guys, I get message like since Elon took over, I sat at like 300 followers for 2 years. And then in the last few months, I've gone from 300 to whatever it is, 1900 today. So I see how it grows, and it's going to continue to grow. So I see my job as just evangelizing my lifestyle and showing I've been deep enough into carnivore. I've been deeper into it in some aspects than anybody I know. On a primal way, trying to match my lifestyle to a Comanche warrior from 1600. That's my health goal. It's like, what's your gym goal? My health goal is to experience nature how a healthy Comanche warrior would have when this land was completely uncorrupted by alcohol matrix, pharma matrix, food matrix, education matrix. These guys, to get through their lives, man, I bet they were just peaking and dialed all the time. And that's what I believe. And I think if you show guys the first 2 or 3 months, that's kind of the risky period. Once guys realize how easy it is, then they get their feet under them. And then there's problems along the way. It's like, do you still drink alcohol? Alcohol is a hard one to get guys to detach from. I left all my friends in just like that for my son. I was captain of my hockey team. Only one guy from my hockey team still talks to me today, but fuck it. It's worth it. I would cut out anybody except my children to be healthy and to be a leader. The world's not healthy today, and it's getting worse. And I'm scared. I'm scared to see what might happen, and we have to do something. So again, one story I tell is I learned with steak in my divorce. Eating steak every day became my formal protest against feminism, alcohol, everything. I was like, fuck, I'm done. I'm fucking done living like this. And I knew I could get through the day. I just gonna eat my steak at the end of the day. I'm gonna get up tomorrow. And I didn't know my physique today. I get a lot of attention from it. It helps me sell. It definitely helps me push this message out. And when guys see my physique I'll be 43 in October, my physique's not going away. And it's dialed in, and you get strong obliques and stuff from this. And but I mean, I have no ego with it. It's like a business sign that says, hey, you can have this too. I'm an average guy. And I was destructed hormonally as much as most of anybody. And, yeah, you can get 80% of your health back just by eating steak. And if you want to go to the more and more levels, well, get fit in nature. Get your breathing right. Get your bacteria right. Get your sleep right. Get your spirituality right. And then you're going to be a 97th or 8th percentile hormonally of a man on earth today. That's exciting, and it's easy to do. I think that's really the sell. I want to be a 1% hormonal man until I die. That's my goal. And I make this pledge. People say, oh, your arteries are hardening. The matrix attacks you from a million areas, and my family attacked me like no tomorrow on this journey. I said, look, if I break my leg, I'll go to the hospital. But I'm not going into a hospital. When I die, I'm going to walk out into the forest, and I'm going to die, hopefully fighting something in nature. Because that's the last final adventure. And effort feels so good to me today that I can't wait for that journey to begin one day. Well, I can wait, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going I'm going to rock this primal journey right to the end. 100%.
Nice. So, what is your Twitter if people want to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm Agent Carnivore on Twitter, and it's my handle is at a man in Ken and the number one. But I'm Agent Carnivore on Twitter, and like I can also tell people who to follow. Different people need different things on the information landscape in this journey, and Twitter's the best place to get it. Like there's a lot of carnivore bros out there who are doing a really good job, like Klaus Carlson from Finland. There's guys with 100 followers who are hammering this every day. There's a lot of guys that can help you, and don't message me if you need to be convinced to go carnivore. That's not where I come into the picture, because I don't have time for that. I can help people when they say, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to go carnivore, tell me what to do. I can set you on the first several month paths quickly and efficiently to recapture your hormones. And if you make it that far and you want to go further, I can take you through a whole range of different protocols that I developed. And I'd love to help anybody who wants to experience this. And I help people all the time now, and I'm proud of them. Like, guys blow me away. They'll start with me, and then they'll message me a month or two later and they'll say, hey man, I have a heart AFib. I didn't tell you that. And they're doing burpees for half an hour a day, right? Because guys want to get better. So that's me. I'm Agent Carnivore on Twitter.
Lars, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Guys, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.